Good day and welcome back to my channel. So next up, where I am now is I'm now finished with all the major buildings, right? So all the major building parts are down and mostly based. Actually, I think they're all based. So I've gotten all the edging done on all of the buildings, and I'm now ready to do the travel tubes. I have taken off main mission's top because I actually need to get to something. With that said, so I'm finding a couple of getchas, and I want to call this one out because I just ran into it. I figured now is a good time for me to talk about the travel tubes anyway. So let's talk about what I'm doing, and let's start with the getcha. So as you can see, this is the orientation that I have, and that's what I'm working on, right? So as I'm going around and doing the travel tubes, and I'll talk about how I'm figuring those out as I go or in a little bit, but I did want to point out a getcha. So these two pieces here, right, between this one and this one, and I believe those are early on in this is the first two you put down, number 6 and number 14. It's not called out, and that drawing is different or looks different than this drawing, even though it's not, because you've got this dotted line here, right? But what's not called out, and this is where you want to look ahead, is the fact that you have a travel tube coming up the middle of those. So you need to have enough clearance around this one for a travel tube to go. Now, if you look, you're also going to need clearance for a travel tube around this one. So if you look here, I've got just the right amount of clearance, or I have clearance for that to go. But what I don't have is clearance for that one. It only gets that far. So this piece needs to be over, I believe it's number 6, needs to be slid just a hair from what I have this way. Now, if you'll recall, when we talked about the base, right, when we talked about how the base goes together, you have these indentation spots where the pieces may go, and that they're not really accurate. Well, they're sort of suggestions, but because they're vac form, the edge is really soft. So unlike having, standard, any other model kit where you have not ejector pin, but locating pins, or they're specific, or little ledges like this one, right? So when we go to do main mission, there'll be places for these that's exactly where they need to go. These little deformations that are on the base, on the vac form, are not really that great. Plus the fact that this is right down the seam. So this is exactly down the seam where two base pieces come together here and here. So when you do that, you could be off by a couple of mil. And if you look at this, that's exactly what we're off. We're off by about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. So if I want to get this in here, I'm going to have to shave this down just a touch, which I'm going to do, right? So I will shave that down, put that in. But that is a gotcha that I do want to call out for this kit, is all these spots where you have a travel tube that has to fit very tightly between. So it would be, and it really is only that one. So it's only this one, I2 and C2 are really the only ones that, or actually right here, because I do remember thinking about this one. So J3 has to have a travel tube go between them, right? Now, I remember when I was putting this one down and this one down, I was thinking, wait, that's right, I need to leave room for a travel tube. And I did. But just barely. And if you look at this, it is just barely. So that one, or J3, right? So for the J3 tube, the I2 tube, and the C2 tube, you have to leave spacing in the radial, right? Anything that is along the radius, right? So in a sort of circumferential measure, you have to worry about those three. Anything else, so if any of these pieces are in or out too far, the method that I'm putting these on with will adapt for you. The trick is making sure you leave room here for the ones that need it. And it looks like, as I walk around here one more time, that is really, those are the only three that you need to worry about for that way. So, okay. Right, so let's talk about travel tubes. So there's your gotcha. Right. So now let's talk about travel tubes. You will see that I have a few of them out. And I recommend, and I believe I mentioned this earlier on, that you want to do the ones that have a specific length first. And what I mean by that is, so just this one right here. So if we look at F2, which is this guy here, when you glue these two pieces down, you have a set distance, right? So the distance between this wall and this wall is set by these two pieces being put down. And again, I mentioned this before, you can be off by a couple of mil one way or another. So if you just measure this and then try to put them on, you are very much asking for trouble. So what I recommend is to actually do the measurement. So I'm going to slide around to, and I'm going to look at, for this example, I'm going to do this one. So I'm going to do C2, all right? So if you look up here, I haven't done any of the C's, and this will be relevant in a second. And where'd he go? There we go. So that's the one I want to do. And literally all you need to do with this, and this is what I recommend, is any of these ones that are going from set point to set point are the ones you want to do first, because those are the ones where your measurements are very, very rigid. So like you've got some flexibility with, J2 or A1, like, so this endpoint can be pretty much wherever, however long A1 ends up really being. Once you get done cutting the A sprue, that's how long that can be. So like K1 has some flexibility because you've got to put it out, but then once that's there, that defines this point, which then defines this point, which then defines that point, right? So you follow how that works. I did this one here, and now we have, with that there, either one of these. So either L1. So here we go. Sorry. So once this one's in place, which I haven't done yet, right? And I don't think I've done it. No, I haven't done it. So that would be that one up there. Once I do this one, which, is again one of those ones that's relevant, that then sets the point for these. So what I'll want to do is I'm going to leave these guys for a little bit later. And it's all a matter of, kind of figuring out when's best. So the point being, when you trim these, some of these may come up short or long. And really what you want to try and do is get it to where the one that you're doing. So like you want to go ahead and cut. So if you look at C, right? C3 is one of those ones. Where is he? Where'd he go? I saw him. Like, so C1, you want to do all your C's, which is the one, there we go. So there's C3 and there's C2. So C1, C2 and C3 are both defined. So I'm going to do those now. I'm going to do C2, then I'm going to do C3, and then what's left then does C, right? So I'm now going to do C2, which is this guy right here. And doing this around the camera is going to be a little bit tricksy. So I apologize if the video part here gets a little funky, but I'm going to put that guy in place. And then I'm using this. I'm using this Micron pen because it will mark these for me. Right, and so I'm going to come right here, make sure that's where I want it. Yeah, because I want it to drop into that slot. I'll mark that right there. So I'm marking it where it will drop in. And so that should drop almost identical. So if I look at that, that's a little bit long. So just a little bit short. Okay. Oops. Now I do have a little flexibility with this guy because he's going to be in under there. But then what I do is I'm going to come over here. Sorry. So I'm going to then take my nippers, and I'm using these sharp side cutters. And you can do either your knife or your sharp side cutters. And I have been finding that the side cutters here are working just fine for what I need, because the end isn't too bad. And I'm pretty accurate on the squareness of the cut. Boom. So here we go. And again, be aware of what side has that. Now, that is C. Now, this is the other thing I'm doing. So I'm taking this, and the ones that I'm marking off are C. So now I know which these are. And I take this, and I drop it into the other ones I've done. So like this one was, A. This one here is F, right? So that way I know which ones I've done and which one's which, because that'll be relevant. And now that I've cut C2, circle it, scratch that off, and then I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to cross that out. So now I know when I go to look at the next one, have I done, like if I look at D, have I done either of the Ds? Nope. So D will come off I still have to cut D off of this. And if I have, or like if I see one where I got to do H, I know that H is already in my tray there. So this is C. This guy's going to go right there. Where are these? So now what I'm going to do is test fit, right? So make sure I have it right side up. Where's the touch pin mark? There it is. I'm going to drop this guy there. That guy there. And that's just a little tight. So I don't know if you can see it from the video, but that right there, I've got a little bit too much clearance. I'm just a little bit too long, which is fine. So then what I will do is take my knife. I'm going to do this on the cutting board. I'm just going to trim that down just a hair. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not going to use my knife. I'm going to use the sandpaper, because that's why we have it. There we go. So I'm going to just take sandpaper. I just sand off just the edge bit. All I'm really doing is I'm putting this down on hard surface. I'm just doing that to sand it down just a touch. And I'm also going to do this on the side. I still need just a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this guy down. I apologize because that will make the camera shake, because it's mounted to the board. So I mounted to the there we go. So now there we are. Now let's see, is that where I want it to be? Yes, that's where I want it to be. So I want it to be there. Now that I have him there, and I know where he's going, so definitely take the time to do. You do want to make a point to take the time to do the dry fitting, because otherwise this is going to be a nightmare. You just won't get it right. So now I'm going to take this, take CA glue, and this is CA glue that is on a toothpick. CA glue, super glue, whatever word you want to use for it, but that's what this is. And I've been using CA glue for the most part for just about all of this, because CA works best with the surface that I'm working with. So I'm going to put that guy back in place. I'm going to make sure this top is flat. Push him down. That's it. And that's C2. So now, because I know that C3 is also one that is hard limited, right? So that's this guy over here, and he'll go here, right? So I know that C3. So I'm going to go pull that same one out, and I'll measure that one out, and then I will have, and I'll just do that process. So excuse me about that. There was a bit of technical difficulty. So I will walk through all this, walking around, dropping these things in, and anywhere I have to, I will go ahead and I'll use my weight to hold things in. But for the most part, probably only till I get to these big radius ones am I going to have an issue. So I had an issue with this one and this one. The rest of these have been dropping in just fine with no real problem. So again, this is an exercise in extreme patience, taking your time doing these things up so that they look right. Once I have them in, then I will go back and I will do the same thing I did around each of these bases, which is drop in the scatter and color it as necessary. Once all this is in, I'm going to go back and hit these a little bit with the same wash that I did on the base, just to give the color that little bit of extra dark. There's really not a whole lot of shade on these because these things don't have the really cool paneling, so you kind of gotta get them to look just sort of dulled down just a little. But I'll do that after that's all done. And then after that, we go back and fix up all the things, like this needs to be touched up, and then we do our finishing of the shading of the base, which will be dry brushing and so forth, but that'll be for another video. Anyway, that's where we are now with Moonbase Alpha. I hope this is helpful, and we call out the gotcha there. And until next time, happy modeling.